Hi there, my name's Ben and I'm the CEO at the University of York Students' Union. I wanted to share a few reflections on how we've tried to adapt to a very different context for students' life, for trading and for organisational resilience, because we knew that trading in the environment with huge uncertainty was going to be really challenging, and we were of the view that we would need great people who understood the challenge, an approach to trading that would be highly agile, and we were also of the view that we needed to develop a few really special USPs, things that would set us out apart from the competition, things that would recognise the very different context for student life in 2020 and almost celebrate the radical changes that have been going on in the world around us. I actually think we were one of the organisations that accepted the pandemic and its long-term impacts much earlier than others. So, as an example, by Easter 2020, as we were going into that first lockdown, the conversations with our staff, with our officers, even with the University Vice-Chancellor and directors, were about our risk appetite and strategy for student life in 2020-21, at least as much as they were about that term 3 last academic year. We were trying to accelerate ourselves through the grief curve and start to try and find strategies, funding, momentum for a new model of commercial trading activity and student life that would see us through the pandemic in the next year. In planning for the new term, we set up very regular SMT meetings. At peak, we were having them 4 times a week, I think. We also had touch points with furloughed staff, and we were beginning a conversation about whether it was better to close down or try to do as much as possible. It was very clear that staff were keen to be creative, they were keen to get involved where it was possible to do so, and that they wanted to look at our commercial business from the point of view of what we could provide rather than what we couldn't. To guide our thoughts, we developed a COVID-19 risk assessment, which we used to mitigate the risks identified by the government for hospitality, and really to try and set 4 guiding principles to help us with our decision making. So, firstly, we wanted to ensure that all students and all staff would be and feel safe. Inspiring that confidence of staff and customers is essential for any high-performing business, but particularly in a world where a pandemic was going on and they felt vulnerable. Secondly, we had to be financially sustainable, and being really open and honest about that lack of financial reserves, and hence the need for new approaches to operating, different opening hours, different partnerships to secure funding, or even reinventing our structures and our processes to strip out costs. Thirdly, we would prioritise accessibility to our services. We were of the view that we couldn't compete with the delivery market, for example, but what we could compete with was offering great places and spaces where our students could freely come and go and enjoy those places. Fourth and finally, we would provide the very best experience possible in line with the restrictions at any given time. So by following those principles, we were able to look at our facilities in a different way, and we were quickly able to break them into 3 areas. Services we shouldn't open because they were difficult to make safe or secure or financially sustainable, or to simply add value to student life. Secondly, services that we would be able to operate with some significant adjustment and change. Third, brand new services, new activities, new opportunities where we could develop using our combined skill sets and our partnerships. A large proportion of the commercial trade in York is driven by licensed activity, so we first took an opportunity to review our systems to enable those spaces to operate effectively. We invested in new tills, new workforce, new apps, new stock control systems, all of which helped operationally, but also underpinned our ability to operate in a financially responsible, high-performing way. It ensured that we limited our wastage and that we controlled our costs much more effectively. Once all of that was in place, we organised a detailed reorientation process for staff to update them with new activities and new approaches, and we launched a recruitment and training piece of work to ensure that we had the staff levels right to deliver the service in a challenging and different environment. We opened our services in week commencing the 21st of September, and this included the opening of our brand new outdoor space, the Forest. So the Forest came about through a creative thought process where we took a space that we had actually previously used for large-scale one-off events around freshers, for example, and we started to develop thoughts about how we could make it into a large outdoor space that would be sustained over a much longer period of time. Our simple logic was that by being outdoors, it would have more agility to operate in a variety of ways that were both COVID secure and add value to student lives. The space was already licensed, which obviously helped, but we had to formalise thoughts on issues like finding a sustainable covering, provision of toilets and other facilities, that service proposition for both food and drink, not to mention consideration of how we would implement track and trace for the thousands of students who would use the space on a daily basis. Through collaboration with the university and a really huge effort from all departments across USU, we were able to form an arena in which there was not only a fully licensed bar, but also bookable spaces for up to 300 students, and food provision from a number of street vendors. This enabled us to really serve the needs of students of York in a COVID-safe outdoor space that added real value to the lives of our students, our clubs, and our societies. So commercially, we were able to open outlets for 7 weeks between lockdown, and turnover was just over £200,000. The Forest alone accounted for nearly 40% of that, with 60% coming from other existing venues that we had pivoted and adjusted. There were 3 venues that we closed down because we didn't feel it was right to try and adjust them in ways that might not be as safe or financially secure as others. Those spaces were used in very different ways to normal. Our normal Term 1 activity would have been different. We had some areas where costs were significantly higher, but we managed to deliver services that were not only widely appreciated, but that were not a drain on our resources. Most importantly, we managed to alter but not cancel those first few weeks of term for the students. We created spaces for them to socialise in, for them to take part in low-level activity, which, whilst nothing on the normal scale of welcome and arrival programmes at York, really did help in some way to offset the pressure and anxiety of the year up to that point. Business. We were praised by the students, but also the authorities, including the university. One of the proudest moments was, an academic registrar just testing out whether we were working properly by trying to enter a premise at 5 to 10, and him being politely told that he was sorry he couldn't enter at that time. We brought the Vice-Chancellor into the open spaces so he could see how people were using them in a really responsible way. They were sat at their tables, they were wearing their face masks until they were sat down. The noise volumes were well managed, etc., etc. So we gained confidence of some of those key stakeholders, including our students, including licensing authorities, really early on. Obviously, it was a disappointment when, after 7 weeks trade, we had to wrap it all up for a period during the second lockdown. But the question is, particularly as we start to think about Term 2 and Term 3, would we do it again? Well, 100% yes. In fact, last week, the university have confirmed that they will be supporting us in extending our Term 1 plans for the Forest right through Term 2, right through Term 3, and even looking towards the summer as a way that we might be able to enable some form of graduation congregation amongst students next summer in a way that wasn't allowed last summer. And of course, we'll learn some of the lessons from that Term 1 period in order to try to make sure that our spaces are even more robust, even more relevant in January and beyond. We're looking at other spaces on campus where we can continue to build the offering, in particular in outdoor sites where the COVID risk is lower and the scope for experience is less of a risk. We will, of course, be strictly applying the principles we set ourselves at the outset, but barring any restrictions being a major barrier, we hope to be able to continue to engage with our students in a creative way for the rest of the year, and to be able to create valuable income for our student staff who work in our commercial spaces. I hope this gives you some confidence that it can be done, that we can reinvent ourselves in ways that are safe, secure, financially sustainable, and add loads of value to student life in the ways that we are all so deeply invested in. Thanks ever so much. Bye-bye.
So during the period since the beginning of lockdown, we have had to adapt some of our ranges. We've looked at who our audience was, particularly for the first 4 or 5 months on campus, and tried to cater more for them. We've dropped some ranges, we've introduced more international ranges, we've reviewed our fruit and veg, and tried to base it more around what the international needs would be. We suspended our bake-off area at the beginning of lockdown. We stopped baking hot grab-and-go goods. We continued with the morning goods of croissants and pain au choc. Once we reintroduced that at the end of September, the hot grab and go stuff, it's been really slow to take up again. So we've literally just in this last couple of days suspended the hot grab and go stuff again. We have seen an increase in the grab and go stuff, morning stuff. They come in, they get the cookies, they're still getting the pain au choc and the croissants for breakfast. Coffee's still going reasonably well. It's been hard. We've increased alcohol sales since the second lockdown has been imposed. People are coming in from 6ish in the evenings, whereas before it was later in the evenings that they were coming in to make their alcohol sales. They're actually coming in earlier in the evening, I presume, because they're spending more time socialising in their own bubbles, in their own flats or in their own accommodations. We've increased our in-house alcohol promotions at the moment, which are going really well. Apart from that, we have increased our presence on social media. We've tried to get the word out there that, you know, we are here, we are open. We do like to cater for everybody's individual needs. Just increased social media presence.
So our business model really, I would say, has not really adapted, but grown more than anything else. All the changes we've kind of brought in because of COVID were stuff we're looking at prior to COVID. You know, things like table service and the apps and investment in technology was all in the pipeline, ready to come in probably next year rather than the year so far. But you know, the big changes, like I said, has been table service, which has worked well for us at Salford. The app for ordering is something we were looking at anyway. And we were looking to emphasise on our quality in food and our wet sales as well, which has come to bear now with Tier 3. We had a focus on food before we went into lockdown when COVID first started. We had a new kitchen manager coming into place, and we had planned for this year now to be a big emphasis on food, and which has been great for us really with Tier 3 restrictions in Greater Manchester. It's made sure we were able to still operate, because also you have to have food now to have a drink, but it's allowed us to operate and not lose too much of our trade under Tier 3 restrictions. And I'll say the majority of that is down to the fact that our food is so good. You know, we've not gone whole whack. We have a very small menu, but it's a very small, high quality, speedy menu. So that's done really well for us. So like I say, our delivery has grown rather than adapted. You know, we have seen loss of sales. Also, we have a smaller capacity. We can't do the other things we used to be able to do. But counter that, we have seen an increase in spend per head, which is also a good sign. It means how we've adapted, how we've grown, is basically bringing back into the fact that we're increasing our spend per head with the customers do have.
The key thing is to just be agile. The laws and restrictions and guidance has changed rapidly, particularly for us in Sheffield. We'd gone into tier 2 and then into tier 3 before the lockdown, and that meant we had to respond quickly to the guidelines so we could still continue delivering our products, but make sure we were legally compliant. And it's not about looking for loopholes in the guidance, it's just adapting what you're offering so you can ensure people are coming through the doors still. So an example of that was in tier 3 before the lockdown, we ran Pop-Tarts bingo event. So Pop-Tarts is our Saturday night club night. So the event was held in one of our bars. It was £15 a ticket per person, and for that they got entertainment with the bingo event, they got a meal and then 2 drinks, and that was all packaged up into one ticket price, and that sold out very quickly for us. Just about creating those experiences that they can't get anywhere else, and really tapping into existing products and brands you've got and really playing to those strengths. We had planned to roll out some other brunch club events similar to what you might have seen in other venues where people are doing bottomless brunches with DJs and that sort of stuff. We were going to offer a version of that where people could get a meal and a drinks package included, either cocktails or beers, and we had to put the brakes on that when we went into lockdown, but we have that stuff ready to roll out as soon as the venues are open. We'll plan to run out some weekly brunch club events with DJs and entertainment, and I expect them to do pretty well too.
Our main challenge as a union was to make sure we ensured that students had the best experience possible. We knew that the university had promised a great student experience, and therefore we used this commitment to ensure that we were at the front of that. We did this by submitting a bid to offer to deliver a COVID-safe spaces on both campuses. Once, in principle, we had that agreed, the next challenges was working with 2 different councils to ensure that we were compliant to both their rules. This was a difficult period because everyone was already being furloughed in the team, so it was left to a small group to implement this. But thankfully the university did provide funding, and we have provided 2 great outdoor experiences for the students.
The biggest challenge has been the introduction of new technologies and the ability to integrate these with existing EPOS solutions. Fidelity Total Control has been the mainstay of the EPOS solution here at Royal Holloway, but it is clear the system is outdated and unable to integrate with newer mobile and digital solutions. Fidelity does not operate with open APIs, and as such is unable to integrate with any other technology solution. This has brought forward a discussion which would have happened later in the year to review our EPOS, but in the short term, a monthly subscription to a cloud-based EPOS provider has enabled the mobile platforms to communicate seamlessly with the venue teams. The teams are able to download sales data from the cloud-based system and upload to Fidelity TCP at the close of each trading session to maintain fiscal audit compliance. The journey has made it very clear that the digital solutions being investigated and implemented need to have a unified approach to ensure that all systems are able to integrate and communicate seamlessly to avoid undue pressure on the finance functions.
So staff morale for us wasn't really a big concern when we reopened in September. During the lockdown, we've looked after our staff quite well. They were receiving furlough the whole way through, and obviously that we were topping up as well. And we had a number of contact sessions with the staff, making sure they're okay, and obviously dealing with any stress they had during that time. So I think the staff really felt they were looked after, and I think that appreciation and being looked after really has come back in bucket loads when we have reopened, and that's been shown in the staff's work ethic and their willingness attitude when they are on shift. They're trying to repay the fact that we've looked after them during lockdown. They also feel now that they're part of the larger union, not just the bar staff or the venue staff. They now feel as if they're part of the union itself, I'm not just a forgotten department that I know some bars might feel like that. But no, staff are great. We've had a small outbreak of COVID amongst the staff in September as well, where we've had to close the bar for a couple of weeks. But I think, as bad as that is from a commercial point of view, that's pulled the staff together through that shared experience. And I think at the moment we have a very close-knit and hard-working staff team who continually feel as if they're being looked after. So yeah, I think our staff are great, to be honest.
We've managed to maintain high levels of staff morale by ensuring complete transparency at all times. We have regular updates with all staff and have been open about the financial position of the union throughout the pandemic. Staff feel empowered, knowing both what is being discussed and planned and how they contribute to that. All our staff know how much we value them and how much we will do to preserve their roles, and this has been evidenced through their engagement and support throughout the pandemic. They do not expect to be rewarded for their commitment, but we have ensured that staff are recognised publicly when they have stepped up, and all that is needed is a small thank you now and again, which is appreciated. Casual staff have also been included in all of our communications, and where opportunity has permitted, we have ensured that we have had their backs. In the initial lockdown, we placed over 350 casual staff onto the furlough scheme through to the end of the academic year, ensuring they were supported for the period they would have been working for the union. Lockdown 2 has provided further opportunity for us to support these staff, and any casual staff member that has been reported on RTI for September and October will be placed on furlough for as long as can be sustained.
Two factors to this really. With permanent staff, we've ensured that our venue managers have been running the new venues so that where their normal pubs are closed, they've actually got these new projects to work on. So that's meant that they've been kept off furlough for as much as we can. They've been in control of their new venues, which have been able to make decisions and feel included. They've also been able to re-employ their student staff, because that was one of our key things, that we had employment for student staff. Keeping them safe and trusting the systems is probably the key thing for morale, making sure they're all in uniforms, they know what we're doing. In fact, they were a big part of getting our second wave of funding for the marquees because of the demand, and they showed that their fellow colleagues and housemates really wanted it and valued it. The university listened, and we did have a second wave of funding to keep us going till Christmas. So I think that everyone feels like it's a group project, and that's been key to keeping it going, especially in the lovely Welsh weather we have during the winter.
So key partners that we've had some support from, I think guess that the university has been the major one. It's all about student experience this year, with lots of departments around the university trying to facilitate lots of different activities to help make people meet and enjoy their time at university, being in such a different set of circumstances that we're in. We've also had, what I mentioned earlier about the East Village, our big outdoor space. We also invited up nightclubs that would normally run student nights in the city centre. So we're operating 4 venues across that outside space, each with its own little individual take on things, and really just driving home that student night out hasn't gone. We were just trying to do it in a slightly different way. So yeah, some really good relationships that we've built over this time.
This whole project has relied on key partnerships, whether it's from student services helping with our funding application and showing why it's so important for mental health and the student experience, to local partners like event providers. We wouldn't have been able to set the venue up without them working in tough conditions. We've had cords installed on the bars for us, we've had dodgem set up, we've had picnic benches, we've had a local nightclub, Sin City partner, that has provided staff to help us as well. Yeah, the whole project has relied on partnerships, and it's something that we're really proud of, and without those partners we wouldn't have been able to deliver what we've delivered.
The first one was when we opened the bars around the freshers period. We did a series of seated club nights, I think you could call them, so some in our bars and some in the nightclub, where we would get a DJ playing music at a background level, and then people could book tables. So we would sell a table of 6 for 30 quid, a table for 4 20 quid, and we put them under the Tuesday, Wednesday and Saturday night club night brands we had. It meant that we were keeping those brands relevant for students, and we were offering something around the freshers period. So when the weather was pretty good in September, we did those outdoors, and then as it got colder, we moved them into the Foundry, which is our nightclub, and yeah, they're most of those sold out, and we had a really good response to those. A big success, I think, is the Sheffield store. We have a website that sells our merch, our hoodies, our Uni of Sheffield merchandise, that was really given a big load of development a couple of years ago, and we've seen sales have been very, very strong through that. Even before the student union was open, with international students buying merch through us, and that's continued, and that's still beating budget on a weekly basis at the moment, which I think is an incredible result. I guess one of the main wins I think we've had this year is we've turned the majority of the Students' Union into social study space. Anywhere where we can put tables and power, we have, social study space on campus has been a premium because not as many people can get into libraries and places like that. So yeah, large areas of the Students' Union are now available for students to come and study within their households. They can sit in tables again up to 6 if they're from the same household, and we have been offering a takeaway coffee service from the coffee shop, and still doing some deliveries from the coffee shop through the app, and that's been a major success for us. We saw takeaway orders from the coffee shop, takings from the coffee shop double per day since opening the social study space, so that's been a great win for us. And again, there aren't many things we can offer as a Students' Union at the moment to be relevant, but social study space and areas where students can be warm and have Wi-Fi and get out of their rooms is something we can offer, and we've seen that's had a major impact in takings for all of our commercial areas, but it's just meant more relevant as a Students' Union, and I think that's very important at the moment.
Our biggest success during this period is easily the Freshers Village concept that me and my team kind of developed and then ran during the Freshers period. I think we did go back and forth considerably around what was the right thing to do as Freshers activity. We knew that there was no way we could deliver the types of activities that we historically would, but we also didn't want to get drawn into a world of digital only and trying to engage students in that way, especially when we were aware that they would become fatigued with that over time. So did they really want to associate their first experience with the Union of Students as being that digital based provision only? So what initially started as a plan to just deliver a physical Freshers Fair in an outdoor setting, which is something we've never really done before, actually developed into a much bigger plan based on kind of the affordability of the infrastructure to do that, of some of these companies who were responsible for delivering marquees and these hospitality experiences were looked into. It actually became obvious that many of them were offering things at a significantly reduced price because of what was currently happening. And I think they just needed to cover the staffing involved in that. So what was a 2-day physical Freshers Fair turned into a 1-week-long Freshers Village. So we operated that on the 3G pitch that the university would normally run sports on. It was made up of 5 marquees, an outside bar and catering facility, and an outdoor seating area. And we ended up being able to deliver 2 outdoor cinema nights, 2 days of physical Freshers Fair, 1 quiz night, wine and cheese night for our mature students. We delivered a market trader and vintage clothing fair day. We delivered an outdoor crazy golf over a 2-day period, and we also delivered a stand-up comedy night of which Russell Kane headlined. The process was difficult. It wasn't without its challenges and a lot of hard work from everyone at the union, and I suppose the support of Derbyshire County Council and EHL. So they were on us considerably, and there was a lot of challenging walk-arounds with them, but it all paid off in the end. I think that what we set out with as expectations at getting 1,200 people through the door for the vast majority of our activities would have been a massive bonus, and 1,200 students we wouldn't have engaged with. We actually got over 4,000 people come through at the time. And the reality is that no positive COVID cases were reported to us, despite the necessary track and trace procedures being put in place. And therefore, it's gone down as a kind of an event that had none of the risks kind of come to light that we thought we might possibly face. Off the back of it, EHO used us as a case study for how a COVID secure event could and should be run. And I think as a union, there's an immense kind of feeling of pride amongst us that we took that risk that not all people, rightly so in most cases, would have been comfortable taking. And I think as we got closer to that period, it did become apparent that it might not happen, but fortunately the guidance was still in our favour. So yeah, from a proudness perspective, to know that we gave that many incoming and returning students the opportunity to enjoy some sense of normal was massive. And I think it's even more important now. Things have gone kind of backwards a little bit in terms of lockdowns and restrictions, that we gave them the opportunity to have that before, I suppose, it all went to the way it is now.
Our biggest successes over this period can be identified in the following 4 ways. 1. The continuation of all key trading operations over the period of the pandemic so far. Some services have closed at specific times due to government restrictions, but the services that have needed to be open have done so, ensuring students and the wider community have been supported at all times. 2. Programming and delivering a full COVID secure Freshers Festival, implementation of curfew and extreme weather. Receiving feedback from students prior to the start of term about the tangible activities that were being hosted, from students during and post events about their satisfaction, and the feedback from artists and agents about the professionalism shown in hosting these events. 3. Operating all the trading operations to the highest standard possible and ensuring COVID secure compliance across all of our venue operations. To date, no cases have been linked to any Wall Holloway Student Union operation, venue or event, and overall cases on campus have been less than 1% of the total student population. And finally, the implementation of new technology to support the amended service models across all commercial operations, completed and implemented within a 6-week window. In doing so, providing a range of services for students and staff at Wall Holloway, as well as the wider community, in the safest manner possible, and in doing so achieving the financial targets set for the operations, with the exception of the SU main venue.
I think our biggest success and achievement throughout the pandemic is that the fact that we've been able to remain open on campus. We've had anywhere in the region of between 500 and 1,200 students that remained on campus originally at the beginning of the lockdown, and us being able to stay open, successfully manage the shop over this period and continued right up until this day, I think has been a massive success for us.